Hey friends, there's something new from our sponsor Text Control. Their new product, DS Server, provides document services out of the box for all platforms and languages. Whether you want to integrate document creation, editing, sharing, or collaboration into your web app, DS Server provides the back-end technology to integrate that professional document processing. For example, using DS Server, you could integrate an MS Word compatible document editor into pure JavaScript, Angular, or an ASP.NET Core application. You can create PDF documents using Web API calls or even request electronic signatures from end users. DS Server is also hosted on-premise in your infrastructure or with your cloud provider, such as Microsoft Azure. And you can test DS Server without downloading anything. Create your first DS Server application in minutes by requesting a trial token on their dedicated website at dsserver.io. That's DSSERVER.io. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm chatting with Bea Law. She's the founder and CEO of QuirkChat. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me. How are you doing?
I'm living the dream. Socially distanced dream, but we're here.
For sure. Same.
Yeah. So you are the CEO of QuirkChat, and
Yes.
I knew you from QuirkTastic, which is your holding company, and we'll learn about that, and from Twitter. And you and I have actually volunteered helping other startups with Digital Undivided and coaching
Yes.
people. So have you always been a passionate startup person, or did you just find that?
Yeah, I actually came across it. I don't know if you remember, but I actually did go through Digital Undivided's incubator program. So that was my first bit of entrepreneurship. Before that, I actually worked in cytogenetics. So I was working either behind a microscope or event hood. And I had the idea for QuirkChat, or at the time, QuirkTastic, just focusing on the fact that I've always been into anime. And I know we'll get more into the company later. But I think after going through that program and just learning about how much I didn't know and then learning more, I was like, I need other people to also know what they don't know. So that definitely sparked my want to mentor.
Yeah, so you have a really interesting story, and there's a couple of angles at which we can go at it. But you're a scientist. You're not
Yeah.
a programmer. You understand the body, but maybe not the software part of things on the computer side. Why aren't you a scientist right now?
I actually feel like I am a scientist in my own way, especially since I run a social networking app. I'm doing a lot of research on Gen Z as well as Alpha Gen. But the reason that I stopped doing what I was doing beforehand is honestly, I think growing up, everyone knew that I was supposed to be the doctor in the family. I had the brains for it. So it's just oh, you're going to be the doctor in the family. And then I went through, had to take an additional year, and that's when I started doing cytogenetics and liked it. And then even took the MCAT and did well in it. But then while I was working in cytogenetics, I realized there was one moment to where I was like, do you really want to do this? Is this what you really want to do? And the time actually came when, because I was juggling both what was first a side project with QuirkTastic, and then also working in cytogenetics. And I remember in the state that I lived in, I was right outside of Duke University, and the only place that you could work late at night was the coffee shop at the hospital. And I just remember seeing all of the doctors coming out and just looking so exhausted and just so not passionate. I'm sure there are, but at that time I was like, oh my God, this would probably drain me. And I just did a lot of deep reflection and realized that maybe this isn't what I want to do.
Interesting. You're the second or third person I've met who got all the way through pre-med, and they were like, I'm going to do doctor science, STEM stuff, and then went to tech. Maybe people who are interested in science and, like you said, are really all technical, just a different flavor. So you said you just swapped one science for another science.
Yeah, basically. And it's been great. I'm not the one who's coding most of QuirkChat, but when it comes to some of the web stuff, I am the person doing that, and also just basically being an interim head of product right now for the company. So it's definitely been swapping a science for science, and I love it.
I like that. And when you do a startup, and when you and I do our startup coaching, we often learn that people start with an idea and then they have to suddenly learn advertising, public speaking, management, marketing,
Yeah.
PR, accounting. Did you know you were signing up for all of that when you became the CEO of a startup?
Oh, absolutely not. I feel like if I did, I wouldn't have done it, of course. Like, would any of us do it? Like, you think it's just like, oh, like, so my motivation for mine, just like a really quick, brief Quirk Chat, is a
Mhm.
video social network for people who are into anime commentary and fandom commentary. Think somewhat similar to like The Talking Dead. If anybody's familiar with like The Walking Dead, you had the whole show afterwards, The Talking Dead, which was like a talk show to just basically cope with what just happened in that episode. Now we have a platform that allows you to do quick bites with other people in the community of like what you thought about whatever's going on in the fandom community. But yeah, so with that, that was like my whole idea. And I started because I was like this Black girl who grew up in a small town in North Carolina. And I was like, oh, I'm trying to find my anime people. Where are you at? And I just came across like a group at Asian Culture Club. And like that was it, but it was enough. But then as an adult, trying to find that community as someone who still very much so loves anime, I was just met with a lot of toxicity online and found it very hard to find my community, especially being like a woman, also Black. It was just lots of lots of bullying. And I think like now that I'm reflecting, I know I'm going to go into your question in a second, but I think as I'm reflecting, the platforms that were built, they were built during a time when anime and being a geek wasn't cool. Like you wanted to kind of hide behind a profile, a like fake username, a fake photo, and like it was very much so prone to trolling, but no one's really tried to innovate in that space. So that was like my whole thing of like I just want to create a platform that feels up to date, but also that I actually want to hang out on. So with that and realizing that I need to figure out fundraising and figuring out like how to build a team when before as a scientist, I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could just be behind a microscope all day. It was definitely a learning curve.
Interesting. The it seems like being a nerd is now a good thing. Like when I was growing up, it was like
Mhm.
nerd, and that was super negative. And I've always just felt that nerds, quirky people, geeks, whatever, it is really about. I'm just so excited about a thing. I'm into the
Mhm.
fandom, whether it be anime or something else. That like, how can you not be excited about this? How,
Exactly.
and now I feel like finally we're being rewarded for our enthusiasm,
Mhm.
and like you
Yes.
said, that you didn't have a place, and now rather than finding your place, you gave up looking and you built a place, and now people find you and find QuirkChat.
Yeah, no, it's been really great. And then also finding other people on the app. Like I'm very active within our app and just seeing people who are actually like talking back to us saying that this is kind of an app that they were looking for, or also
Mhm.
that they had this issue. Like it's definitely validating.
Yeah. Now you've got tens of thousands of users. Like this is not a small thing. But I'm curious, when you started this, did you think it would go to like, 100,000 users overnight, or has it gone slower or faster than you thought it would go?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I of course like I started it for me when it came to like just trying to find community. And I remember like one of my first things that kind of blew up to where I was like, oh, like maybe this could be a thing was well, first, to kind of back up a little bit, QuirkChat started as QuirkTastic, which was a media company.
Hmm.
And with that, it was just like my little blog, basically, and me just
Hmm.
writing about either anime things that I liked or just nerdy things. And I remember coming across an article on another platform that was like so much bigger than mine, who made this very long list of cosplayers that you should know. And I looked through the long list, scrolling and scrolling, and like none of the cosplayers were anything but like white and maybe like a few Asian people, which I'm just like, wow, like you knew anime's from Japan, right? And like none of them were black, none of them were Latin, none of them were anything. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna just make a counter article out of spite just to be like, look at these 200. Like, I made sure that it was a substantial number. I was like, look at these 200 cosplayers of color you should know. And that went viral. Like, I think that month, or for me, it went viral. I think we had over 500,000 monthly actives like for those next 2 months because of that article. And I think it was from then where I was like, okay, like my people are out there. I just need to really figure out like I guess like what they want, or like if they have any like thing that could like kind of bind us all together outside of media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about that when I think about this podcast, where I'm not having any trouble finding people who look like the mall. And when you walk around the mall before
Mm-hmm.
the panini, you would
Yes,
walk
the
around the mall and
panini.
you're like, look at all these people. This looks like America, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
cool people from all over, all shapes, sizes, and colors. And if you put together a list of 50 cosplayers, I think if you ended up with 49 white people, that'd be pretty hard. That's like passing 49 white people in a row at the mall. Like
Yeah.
you flip a coin enough and you're like, hang on a second, this isn't quite right. And then you get that unconscious bias. And then suddenly you've put a list together that isn't representative. So it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like QuirkChat is going out of its way to be really inclusive and really supportive of all people from all over.
Yeah, I would say with that, it's more of like you kind of build for the people who wanted and needed, and like I think if you're building
Mm.
for the least represented, you somehow also build for everybody, you know. And I think especially if you're building in America or like something that's geared towards this, it's like you
Mm-hmm.
can't really satisfy everyone ever with whatever you build. However, if you are focusing on the people who are the least represented, but also this is a big need for them, you in a way kind of include everybody. And
That is
that's like,
really cool.
yeah, it's been very interesting to see. So I've loved it.
You should make t-shirts, because I think there's something there, because you're saying if you build for the least visible people,
Mhm,
the most underrepresented, you are casting the widest possible net. So even by
mhm.
building for a niche, you end up casting that net and getting everyone. That's a wonderful design principle and a company principle to run
Yeah,
your whole business on.
absolutely. Mhm.
That's really cool. So you've, though, dedicated your life to this now. Like, you have pivoted not only your entire life and your decisions, but also your company. We'll talk about your pivots in a minute here. When you're doing a startup, you say, I'm going to quit my job behind a Microsoft, behind a microscope,
Microscope,
rather.
yes.
Sorry, Microsoft, one of those words that just pops out of my mouth
Of
sometimes.
course, it's a tech
Yeah,
podcast, I
yeah.
understand.
And then you're like, well, but I still have to pay the rent, and there's
Mhm.
the whole food thing, and dental work. Like,
Yeah.
how does that work, and when does it become like I'm a starving startup person versus this is actually a thing and this is going to work? What's that process like?
Oh man, it's like wow. So I'm actually like in a few groups of entrepreneurs who are like of many ranges, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them have raised like a few 100,000, some of them have raised millions, and it just seems like we're all like trying to figure out like, oh, like when does it pop off? Like when do things get better? Though I know at the beginning, so I quit my job in cytogenetics for more personal reasons, but also it was like my first time really taking a chance on myself. I
Mm-hmm.
like quit cytogenetics just because like the culture fit was not great. I'd been working there for a while, and just something happened on the job to where I was like, I can't stand by this anymore. And I
Mm-hmm.
was also having somewhat of like a cognitive dissonance with like already working on what was then QuirkTastic, and like having so much like fun there. Like at that time, we were making some money through like ads as well as just like brand partnerships. So like it wasn't a lot, but it was something to where it's like there's something here. And so with that, I kind of boldly and almost like stupidly quit my job. Like I kind of wish I could have held out, because you never know just how much it's gonna cost to do a startup, especially when you start bringing on other people and just thinking about runway of like how do I make this last for a while. But I think with us, we've had several ups and downs of just like, all right, we get a little bit of funding and like, oh, we can do this. We're here for the next few months. And then go to fundraise, and then it's like, ooh, it's kind of tight. And I know that our like saddest/worst moment was during the pandemic, actually. So before a little bit about my journey, I was working in science. I decided to quit to do what was then QuirkTastic, the media company, full time. And that's also when I was going through Digital Undivided's incubator. That was my first time learning anything about investment. I didn't know what a seed versus series A, pre-seed, any of that. And I was at the like to let you know like where my level of knowledge was at the time, I was like, oh, someone's investing in my company. Like when do I pay them back? Like, is it like a year or like 2 years? Like, how do I, what, like I was seeing it as more of like a loan as opposed to like a business transaction and an investment, like a true investment. So that's where my knowledge was at the time. But I went through that program, learned a lot, ended up actually getting into WeFunder at the time had an XX program where they invited 10 women-owned companies to like fly to San Francisco and live basically in a hacker house. So I lived in a cot. I lived on a cot for like 3 months building out like the first version of my product. They gave us like maybe 20K at the time. And I was like, oh, first check. Yes. Like this is going to be something. 20K. I'm going to build the whole company out of 20K. And of course, that did not last at all, especially in somewhere as expensive as San Francisco. And but I was able to build up something enough to where it was, I guess, like a proof of concept, MVP, alpha, whatever you'd call it, to where I was able to bring on a few angels. Most of them came from connections from Digital Undivided, actually. And when people are like, "Oh yeah, you raised like a family, friends and family round," like just like ask your parents and your aunts and uncles to do it. I was like, do you realize that that is not an option for me? Like, if I were to ask them for more than $25, like they would like raise an eyebrow to me of like, when are you paying me back?
You have McDonald's money? No,
yeah, that's exactly it. Like, you got McDonald's money? I don't think so. So like I knew that wasn't an option.
And that's a really good point, by the way, for our audience to understand that like not everyone has a person in their life or persons where they can just pick up the phone and someone can cut you 25 grand check.
Oh yeah.
That's like a fundamentally important thing about startup founders. And a lot of our self-made millionaires and billionaires tend to forget that their first round was 100 grand from an uncle or an aunt. And it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And like even my first angel checks weren't 25, they were 10. And like I got one person who invested 10 in me, and I was like, I have no connections to other angel investors. I don't even know how this happened. She was a lawyer. And I told her, I was like, is there any way you could introduce me to your friends who are also willing to like invest? And that's like how I got my first 50K. But then from that program, I realized that I still needed to build a little bit more of my business acumen, but also get in front of more people. So the network, like my network was like lacking. Also, I'm not the type to just go out to like random like networking events as an introvert. So I was like, I'd rather figure something else out.
Are you under increasing pressure to ship code faster than ever before? Then it's time to work smarter with Raygun's modern approach to error and performance monitoring. Raygun gives you instant visibility into the health of your software. And what makes it so unique is that it not only tells you when something's gone wrong, it shows you exactly where it's gone wrong and how to fix it, right down to the line of code. Made by developers for developers, Raygun has built a suite of monitoring tools that are used and loved by thousands of software teams every day. You can monitor every corner of your tech stack with widespread language support and native integrations with GitHub, Jira, Slack, Bitbucket, Octopus Deploy, and more for even greater visibility. Visit raygun.com to resolve issues faster and to deliver flawless digital experiences for your users. That's raygun.com to get started on your free 14-day trial with plans starting from as little as $4 a month. Raygun.com. Let me dig into one thing just for a minute or two. If you're starting up a small company and you get 10 grand, 20 grand, what happened there? Like you also did WeFunder, which is kind of like Kickstarter for startups. And full disclosure for our audience, I invested via WeFunder in QuirkChat. But honestly, I'd have to go read the paperwork because I don't know if I have 0.0002% of the company. Like, what does that mean when a lawyer gives you 10 grand because they believe in you? Did she buy a piece of the company or did she buy a return on an investment?
Yeah, so with that, she did that on a safe. Like my first thing, even with WeFunder, whenever we did their program, it was like 20K on a safe. So simple agreement for future equity, I believe is what that stands for, until we have a price round. And with that was her really believing that we're going to return her investment. And like as a founder, like if anybody gives me anything, I'm going to return it. Like no matter, that's like my like I'm not one of the type of people that's like, oh, like thanks, I learned a lot from this and now I'm going to start something else. Like, no. So that's what that meant to me, and I think she understood that and was willing to just really tell her network about me. But I think what also like kind of spurred that was shortly after Snapchat actually decided to do their accelerator called Yellow, where they were investing a certain amount. I forgot if it was 150K or I think it was 150K into startups. And we actually got selected as one of those companies. So I used the announcement from that to bring in even more money on a safe of like, hey, Snapchat's investing. You want to get on this as well? So from that, we were able to do, I think they did 150K. And from that announcement, we were able to do 250K. And that was like what sustained the company outside of like, we had our e-commerce, which was also bringing in money as well. But that sustained the company for a while until recently.
And then, so the 250K, is that from Pharrell Williams like 2 weeks ago, or is that a different 250K?
Oh, no, that's a different 250K. Yeah. So a bit more into our journey. So we had Snapchat, that was in 2019. And from there, we were able to build out what was supposed to be like our business, like making money type of product, which was in the app. We were, since we are a social networking company and most of our people are into the anime and like comic convention space, for us at the time, it made sense for us to go after these comic conventions. There are like, I think about 30 million tickets sold to comic conventions, like comic, anime, gaming all together. So I was like, we could be somewhat of like an Eventbrite for these companies that are wanting to basically like increase diversity, but also like just have more people and like just basically helping cosplayers plan out their cons. And like for reference, a lot of cosplayers go to like anywhere from like 3 to 10 events each year before the panorama. so that was the goal. We had built that out. That definitely took several months, and by the beginning, I think January 2020, we had actually brought on about 13 different conventions to use the platform, which ticket wise was like hundreds of thousands of tickets. So we were doing great until March 2020, where everything shut down and all of that like potential annual revenue went away. And I think that was like the hardest moment of just like, wow, we spent like basically we risked money on this bet that this part of the product would be what grew us. And now due to these crazy events, like that's no longer an option. Where do we go from here?
Got it. Okay. And pivoting, though, is a part of startup life. Like when I see you coaching startups through Digital Undivided, you're very square with them about like, what you think your idea is and the way you think your idea is going to make money may not be it. So you're actually living that. So when I see you, giving people this advice, you're really a version of them, like a Loki variant of them that's in the future. And it's like, trust me, you're going to have to pivot. So here you are pivoting again.
Yeah. And I mean, I think also for me, like, I know there are lots of people out there who are like, oh, like, I'm not going to put it out until it's perfect. I think because of my background of doing like the scientific method, I'm like, we're going to just try out a whole bunch of things and the audience is going to tell us like what they think of it. And that's been true. Even the version of the app that's out now, like I'm talking to the audience, like even before this call, I had maybe 5 different calls of like, just talking to people who are using the app and trying to figure out how we could make it better for them. But it's like, had I waited until this point to put out a product when I figured out as much as I have now, like we wouldn't have anything, the community wouldn't respect us as much as they do. So that's definitely important.
Yeah. Customer development is ongoing. There's who you think your customer is. There's who you learn your customer is. And then there's their changing lives. And in this case, during the pandemonium, their lives have changed and they're different people than you thought they were.
Exactly. That's very true. Even something crazy and awesome that happened during the pandemic was so I thought it was like a disaster once we realized that like oh no, like all the Comic Cons are gone, like all of our revenue is gone. But then taking it a step further, a lot of the media companies such as like HBO and Warner Brothers, who would spend a lot of their money at conventions trying to get people like us to watch their shows and doing these crazy activations, they now have to figure out where to spend that experimental budget. And
Mhm.
I think we were very well positioned at the time to be the platform for them trying to figure out where to grow their community. So we actually ended up working with some of these media brands on campaigns to help them with like shows like Lovecraft Country, or if they had other online events. And I think that was just like when I realized like, okay, like even if the product isn't what it needs to be, like we're definitely serving a need for the community. It's not going to look the same as like what I envisioned in my head, but as long as we like continue to serve this community, like we're going to figure it out.
Right. So you're a founder, you're a CEO, and you're a community leader, and
Yeah.
you're shepherding the community forward as they tell you what they need, and as you suggest ideas about what you think that they might need.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I'll let it come from your mouth. So thanks.
So here's a question though. When I hear numbers like 50,000, 100,000, and now recently through Pharrell Williams' firm Black Ambition, and with help from people like Felicia Hatcher, you
Hmm.
received $250,000. I'm thinking to myself, oh, when do you get a Tesla? When are you moving into the penthouse?
So
So
does my family. My goodness.
yeah, when you hear numbers like that, you
Hmm.
can all, and again, our audience has also got a lot of people from overseas. That's a huge amount of money. That's many times one individual's yearly salary.
Hmm.
It's huge. So now you probably have a cap table, a capitalization table that's probably in the millions. But did that mean that you bought an office? Or is it really about the human cost? It's about W-2'd employee. For those who are overseas, a W-2'd employee is like a full-time employee with benefits who works here, as opposed to building your startup by hiring contractors.
Yeah, so I just to put perspective for people who are not familiar with how expensive engineers are, especially in like the Bay Area,
Mm-hmm.
we have a listing out right now for a founding engineer, and we put the starting price at 150K with equity. And we have not been able to find anything. And it's like not enough. So we're trying to figure out other things. So yeah, a lot of that 250K, and thankfully that's a part of a larger round that we're raising. We are raising a proper seed round.
Hmm.
Just for SEC, I don't know if I can say like any
Yeah,
details
but a
about
proper
that.
seed round is
Yeah,
fine.
a proper seed round, and so
Congratulations.
thank you so much. So that's a small part of like the overall round. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that is going to capital. Though thankfully we actually have had an office, which I didn't think that we ever would, but it came through a special opportunity. And
Mm-hmm.
I recently moved the company to Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is like random. I don't expect most people to know about that. It's right above Texas for anyone who goes to South by
It's
Southwest.
it's it's the Silicon Prairie.
Oh, I feel like they should like take that. Oh my gosh, I may mention it in a next meeting or something.
I'm
But
just saying
yeah,
that they're rebuilding, for folks who can go in, and I love the show. That I like doing the show because people go and Google about things afterwards. Go learn about Black Wall Street and
mhm.
the history of Tulsa. And it sounds like Tulsa is trying to rebuild themselves as a startup, kind of a startup mecca, if I may say that word.
Yeah, no, it's really great. Like I've only been in Tulsa for now about two months actually, and the I've already gotten very much so introduced to the VCs in this area, the angels
Mm-hmm.
of this area, and they're really working to make this more of a tech hub. But I say all that to say that like the office wasn't the plan, but it became a part of it once they're like, you're the tech startup here that we want to support. So like let's do this office thing. So that's great. However, when you think of like the 250K plus the rest of the seed round, I'm really looking into talent because we had built an MVP. We had built something a little bit more than an MVP. We get feedback, but it's like at the end of the day, if your product isn't like performing well and not doing what it needs to do, then like
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have setbacks. So that's definitely a priority for us.
So then are you an employee of your own company then, or is it that the CEO gets paid last?
Well, see, okay. So Candace, who is our like head of ops, me and I we've fought about this to where I was like, no, it's fine. Though, like, there were definitely times where I did not pay myself. I'm at a
Mm-hmm.
point now to where I can pay myself. Of course, it's not like anything crazy, but I can pay myself to where I'm comfortable. Also,
Mm-hmm.
Tulsa, Oklahoma is very cheap. Like, I'm paying like 800 for a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom, just to like let y'all know I'm living great over here on a little bit of budget.
That's like
Though
Starbucks money in the Bay. Like you could
yeah,
barely get a latte a day.
I was gonna say, when I lived in the Bay Area, I paid like 900 and had 3 additional roommates, and I had a very small room and shared a bathroom with all of those roommates. So
It's the feeling of being landlocked that I don't know if I could deal with. If I can't drive 20 minutes to the beach, I think I would get a little bit
I'm still
antsy.
feeling that. Like, even when I lived in North Carolina, it's like, all right, beach and mountains within like 2, maybe 3 hours. Like, but here, my closest beach is maybe like 7 to 9 hours away and
Yeah,
somewhere.
and
So
you can feel it in your bones. Like your
I
body knows
can.
that there's no water nearby that you can do anything with.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm just like, I don't know about the fish here. I'm probably gonna just not eat it. But yeah, sorry.
Okay,
Tangent.
so
Oh,
so
sorry.
you're able to pay yourself though, which is important. But as a CEO founder job, then you're now 4 years into this with multiple pivots and changes, and you've changed locations, you've
Mhm.
changed business models. Are you still like 80 hours a week, or can you like? I hear about hustle culture and people burning themselves out. Um, I don't know if I would have 4 years of my life, and now you're not even there yet. You're still raising money. You're still talking to
Mhm.
engineers. You're talking to customers all the time. How many hours a week are you working, and what if you hurt yourself?
Yeah. Oh, I've already hurt myself. I've definitely already hurt myself to where now, like, for the sake of my health, like, for those who don't know, I'm like about to hit that 30, like I'm almost 30, and I'm just like,
Oh,
I cannot I
I feel so
cannot do.
bad for you.
Oh my gosh, stop it. But no, but with that, it's like, okay, when I first started, I was like, I think mid-20s or whatever, and like just very bright-eyed,
You're invincible
bushy-tailed
at
with
that
it.
age.
Yeah. Invincible. But yes, but no, I think right now my body is just like, we can't do this, but we also still need to like move forward. What are the systems we can put into place to like make sure that this works out?
Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of that has been through like taking the time to actually coach myself and like also working with coaches to figure out like, how do I trust my team to do the things that I pay them to do? How do I make sure that I'm hiring people who can like take care of certain parts of the company while I am out fundraising and having 10 to 12 meetings per day? So it's
Wow.
yeah, it's definitely something that I'm still working on, but also something that I'm making a priority. Like, I've definitely made sure to take care of myself. I'm like making sure to eat healthier, being more plant-based and things like that. But right now, like, I mean, I'm doing like the typical, I'd say like 40 hours a week. Though before, it was like if I slept 4 hours a night, like that was great, which like turned into lots of health issues to
Mhm.
where I was like, something's got to go. And it's not going to be me. I need to last.
So, as we get towards the end of our podcast here, what can people who are listening do to support QuirkChat?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like we're smack dab in the middle of a seed round. So if you are interested in learning more, definitely you can reach out to me, be at quirkchat.com. Hope it's okay that I said my email on this. Also, I would love for anyone who's into anime, into geek fandom at all, like Marvel, DC, or even the most recent topic that's been doing well on our platform is horror, like any horror fans, which is awesome. I'd love for you to check out QuirkChat. You can download an iOS and Android. And yeah, and follow us on at QuirkChat on all platforms.
Very cool. Me and the boys are going to go see the last M. Night Shyamalan old movie. So I will then head over to QuirkChat to talk about my theories of why I feel a certain kind of way about it. And then we also have the Green Knight with Dev Patel.
Oh,
And I've got I got a lot of feelings about that. And I don't know, TikTok's not the place to be. QuirkChat is
yeah,
the place to be.
absolutely.
Very cool. I've been chatting with B Law. She's the CEO and the founder of QuirkChat. And this has been another episode of Hansel Minutes. And we'll see you again next week.